Welcome, dear listener, to a peaceful journey through time. Tonight, we'll drift together through the fascinating and deeply human story of artificial intelligence, a tale that spans thousands of years of human curiosity, wonder, and gentle discoveries. Close your eyes now, and settle into your most comfortable position. Feel your shoulders relax, let your breathing slow and deepen. Tonight, there's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to accomplish. Simply rest here with me as we travel back through the centuries, exploring one of humanity's most enduring dreams. This is not a story of cold machines or frightening futures, but rather a warm tale of human ingenuity, of dreamers and thinkers, philosophers and inventors, who dared to wonder, what if we could create minds like our own? What if we could breathe life into clay, infuse intelligence into metal, and teach machines to think and feel? From ancient myths whispered around Mediterranean fires to modern neural networks humming quietly in data centers, this has always been a story about us, about our deepest desires to understand intelligence, to create companions, and to extend our own capabilities beyond the limitations of flesh and bone. Take another deep breath, feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort and peace. Let the weight of the day drift away like morning mist. And now, let us begin this tranquil voyage through the beautiful, winding history of artificial intelligence. Our story begins not in modern laboratories filled with humming computers, but in the misty realms of ancient mythology and folklore, where artificial beings first lived and breathed in the boundless landscape of human imagination. Picture, if you will, the rocky shores of ancient Greece, where the Mediterranean waves lap gently against weathered cliffs. Here, nearly 3,000 years ago, Homer crafted verses that would echo through eternity. In his epic poem, the Iliad, he told of Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith whose forge burned eternally beneath Mount Olympus. Hephaestus was not content to craft mere tools and weapons. In his divine workshop, sparks flying from his hammer like fallen stars, he created something far more wondrous, golden servants that could think, speak, and move with purpose. These weren't mere statues animated by magic, but thinking beings forged from precious metal, perhaps the very first artificial intelligences to capture human imagination. Homer described these golden maidens in detail. They possessed the knowledge of the gods, could speak with wisdom, and moved through Hephaestus's workshop with graceful intelligence, assisting their creator with his divine labors. They were companions, helpers, and friends. The earliest vision of artificial intelligence as something beneficial and beautiful rather than threatening. The Greeks also told stories of Talos, the bronze giant who protected the island of Crete. 3 times each day, Talos would walk the entire coastline of the island, his bronze feet thundering against the rocky shores, watching for invaders and protecting the people he was created to serve. What made Talos truly remarkable was not his size, but his intelligence. He was powered by a single vein filled with divine ichor, a golden fluid that flowed from his neck to his ankle like the lifeblood of a god. This divine essence flowing through bronze pathways, can you see how remarkably similar this is to our modern understanding of information flowing through computer circuits? The ancient Greeks, in their poetic wisdom, had imagined something remarkably close to what we might now call a computer program or operating system. But Greece was not the only ancient culture to dream of artificial minds. Across the Mediterranean, in the wisdom traditions of Judaism, there emerged stories of the golem, a creature of clay and earth brought to life through sacred words and divine breath. The most famous of these was the Golem of Prague, created in the late 16th century by Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, known affectionately as the Mihail. According to legend, Rabbi Lo formed this being from the clay of the Vltava River, breathing life into it through mystical incantations and placing upon its forehead the Hebrew word emet, meaning truth. The golem of Prague was not a fearsome monster, but a gentle protector. It helped the rabbi with daily tasks, protected the Jewish community from persecution, and followed simple but important commands. Like the golden servants of Hephaestus, this artificial being was created not to replace human intelligence, but to serve and protect, to be a faithful companion in times of need. The golem stories spread throughout Eastern European folklore, each tale adding new layers to our understanding of artificial intelligence. These beings could be incredibly strong, utterly loyal, and helpful beyond measure. But they also required careful instruction and gentle guidance, much like how we think about AI safety and alignment today. In ancient China, the philosopher Li Zi wrote of artificial beings created by the craftsman Yan Shi, who presented a mechanical man to King Mu of Zhou. This artificial person could sing, dance, and move with such lifelike grace that the king initially believed it was human. When the craftsman disassembled the figure, revealing intricate mechanical parts within, the king marveled at the intersection of artistry and engineering. What's beautiful about these ancient stories is how they reflect humanity's earliest dreams of artificial companions. In every culture, across every continent, humans have imagined creating life, not as conquerors seeking to play God, but as lonely beings seeking friendship, protection, and help with the burdens of daily existence. These mythical beings were never portrayed as threats to humanity. Instead, they were extensions of our best intentions, helpers, protectors, wise counselors, and faithful friends. They reflected our deep desire to create life, to have companions who could ease our burdens and share our world. As we move forward through history, drifting like a gentle current through time, we'll see how these ancient dreams would slowly, carefully, begin to take shape in the real world. But the heart of artificial intelligence, the desire to create helpful, thinking companions, would remain beautifully unchanged. Let us drift now to the 18th and 19th centuries. An age of clockwork and steam, of intricate mechanisms and precise engineering, when brilliant minds began building the first mechanical beings that could truly be called ancestors of artificial intelligence. Picture the elegant salons of 18th-century Europe, where nobles and intellectuals gathered by candlelight to discuss philosophy, science, and the wonders of mechanical engineering. It was in this world of powdered wigs and rationalist philosophy that artificial intelligence took its first tentative steps from myth into reality. In 1770, a Hungarian inventor named Wolfgang von Kempelen unveiled something that would astound the world, a chess-playing automaton called the Turk. This mechanical marvel sat regally behind a large wooden cabinet, dressed in Ottoman robes and turban, one mechanical arm poised thoughtfully above a chessboard. The Turk could play chess against human opponents, and remarkably, consistently win. The machine toured Europe like a traveling philosopher, drawing crowds of amazed spectators. It defeated nearly everyone who challenged it, from common citizens to nobility. Benjamin Franklin, the American polymath and founding father, sat across from the Turk in Paris and found himself thoroughly outmaneuvered by mechanical intelligence. Even Napoleon Bonaparte, emperor and strategic genius, was defeated by this artificial mind. For over 80 years, the Turk captured imaginations across 2 continents. People began to believe, perhaps for the first time in history, that machines could truly think, that artificial minds were not just the stuff of mythology, but achievable reality. Of course, we later learned that the Turk concealed a human chess master inside its cabinet, operating the mechanism through an ingenious system of hidden compartments and mechanical linkages. But this revelation doesn't diminish its importance. The Turk proved that people were ready to accept machine intelligence, that the idea of thinking machines was not frightening, but fascinating. Around the same time, French inventor Jacques de Vaucanson was creating his own mechanical wonders in the workshops of Paris. His most famous creation, known as the digesting duck, was a marvel of 18th-century engineering. This golden automaton could eat grain, appear to digest it through mechanical processes, and even excrete waste, a complete artificial digestive system crafted from brass and clockwork. But Vaucanson's masterpiece was perhaps his flute-playing automaton, a mechanical musician that could perform 12 different melodies with remarkable skill. Watch this artificial being as it sits serenely, its mechanical fingers dancing across the holes of its flute, producing hauntingly beautiful music. The melodies it played weren't pre-recorded or simply mechanical repetitions, but dynamic performances with variations in breath control and finger placement. These automatons represented something profound, the first machines that could perform complex, intelligent behaviors that previously required human skill and creativity. They were the bridge between the mythical artificial beings of ancient stories and the electronic minds we know today. But perhaps the most important dreamer of this era was a gentle English mathematician named Charles Babbage. Working in the quiet halls of Cambridge University in the 1830s, Babbage designed what he called the analytical engine, a mechanical computer that could perform calculations, store information, and follow complex sequences of instructions. Babbage was a man driven by beautiful obsessions. He spent decades and much of his personal fortune trying to build machines that could eliminate human error from mathematical calculations. His analytical engine, though never completed in his lifetime due to the limitations of 19th-century manufacturing, contained all the logical elements of a modern computer, an input system, memory, a central processing unit, and output mechanisms. Working alongside Babbage was Ada Lovelace, the daughter of the Romantic poet Lord Byron. Ada possessed both her father's creative imagination and a brilliant mathematical mind. In 1843, she published what many consider to be the first computer program, a set of instructions for Babbage's analytical engine to calculate Bernoulli numbers. But Ada's vision extended far beyond mere calculation. In her notes, she wrote prophetically that such machines might one day be capable of composing music, creating art, and processing any content that could be expressed in symbolic form. She saw that the true power of mechanical minds lay not in replacing human intelligence, but in extending it into new realms of possibility. These early pioneers weren't trying to create artificial minds to replace human intelligence or to demonstrate their superiority over nature. Instead, they were driven by a gentle curiosity about the nature of thought itself, and a desire to create tools that could help humans think more clearly, calculate more accurately, and accomplish more wonderful things. In their quiet workshops, filled with the soft sounds of ticking clockwork and the gentle scraping of metal on metal, they were laying the foundation for everything that would come after. Proving that intelligence could indeed be embodied in mechanisms, that thinking could be mechanical, and that artificial minds could be both achievable and beneficial. As the 19th century drew to a close, the stage was set for the next great leap forward. The dreams of artificial intelligence were about to encounter the revolutionary power of electricity, and the mechanical minds of clockwork and steam would give way to the electronic brains that would reshape our world. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the dreams of artificial minds began to take more concrete form, guided by brilliant thinkers who approached these possibilities with both scientific rigor and profound humanity. Let us visit the peaceful grounds of King's College, Cambridge, in the 1930s. Here, along tree-lined paths where scholars have walked for centuries, a young mathematician named Alan Turing was quietly revolutionizing our understanding of computation and intelligence. Turing was a gentle soul with an almost childlike curiosity about the world around him. He loved long runs through the English countryside, often stopping to examine flowers or observe the patterns of growth in plants. His colleagues remember him as somewhat eccentric but deeply kind, a man who would chain his coffee mug to a radiator to prevent theft, yet spend hours patiently explaining complex mathematical concepts to anyone who showed interest. In 1936, while still a graduate student, Turing published a paper that would change everything. Working in the quiet of his study, surrounded by books and mathematical papers, he described what we now call the Turing machine, not a physical device, but a beautiful mathematical concept that proved any problem that could be solved algorithmically could be solved by a simple machine following basic rules. Imagine a machine of infinite simplicity, a strip of tape divided into squares, each square containing a symbol. A reading head that can examine one square at a time, reading the symbol and then, based on its current state and what it reads, either changing the symbol, moving left or right, or changing its internal state. This simple machine, following simple rules, could in theory solve any problem that could be solved at all. This wasn't just a mathematical abstraction, it was a profound insight into the nature of intelligence itself. Turing showed that thinking, at its most fundamental level, could be reduced to the mechanical manipulation of symbols according to logical rules. Intelligence, he suggested, was computational. When World War II erupted, Turing's theoretical insights found urgent practical application. At Bletchley Park, a Victorian mansion turned code-breaking center, Turing and his colleagues worked tirelessly to crack the German Enigma code. The Enigma machine produced encryptions so complex that German commanders believed them to be unbreakable, but Turing saw them as simply another computational problem. Working with a team that included brilliant women mathematicians often overlooked by history, Turing helped design the Colossus computers, room-sized mechanical brains that could process thousands of possible decryptions per second. These were among the first programmable electronic computers, and they helped shorten the war by an estimated 2 years, saving countless lives. But Turing's greatest contribution to artificial intelligence came after the war, in a paper published in 1950 titled Computing Machinery and Intelligence. Sitting in his study at the University of Manchester, Turing posed a simple but profound question: can machines think? Rather than getting bogged down in philosophical definitions of consciousness or intelligence, Turing proposed an elegant test. Imagine a human judge engaged in natural language conversation with two hidden participants, one human, one machine. If the judge cannot reliably distinguish between the human and machine responses, then, Turing suggested, we should consider the machine to be thinking. This Turing test wasn't meant to be a definitive measure of machine consciousness, but rather a practical way to evaluate machine intelligence. Turing understood that the question, can machines think, was less important than, can machines behave intelligently? He was more interested in creating useful artificial minds than in solving philosophical puzzles about the nature of consciousness. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, other gentle pioneers were laying the groundwork for the electronic age. John von Neumann, a Hungarian-American mathematician with a legendary memory and remarkably kind demeanor, was working at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, designing the architecture that would power the first real computers. Von Neumann was known for his incredible mental abilities. He could multiply 8-digit numbers in his head and recite entire books from memory after reading them once. Yet those who knew him remembered not his intellectual gifts, but his generosity and humanity. He would spend hours helping younger colleagues, sharing insights freely and encouraging others to pursue their own mathematical dreams. Von Neumann's computer architecture, developed in the quiet halls of Princeton in the 1940s, established the basic structure that still influences computer design today. A central processing unit, memory that stores both data and instructions, input and output systems, and the crucial insight that programs themselves could be stored in memory and modified during execution. This might seem like a technical detail, but it was revolutionary. Previous computers were hardwired for specific tasks. Von Neumann's design created truly universal machines, computers that could run any program, solve any computational problem, and adapt to new challenges simply by loading new instructions. During this same period, other pioneers were making equally important contributions. Claude Shannon, working at Bell Labs, published his groundbreaking work on information theory, showing how all information could be encoded in binary digits, the ones and zeros that still form the basis of digital communication today. Shannon was another gentle genius, known for his playful inventions as much as his serious mathematical work. He built mechanical mice that could learn to navigate mazes, juggling machines, and even a computer that could play chess, though not very well. His office was filled with curious mechanical gadgets, each one exploring some aspect of information, communication, or mechanical intelligence. What's beautiful about this era is how these pioneers approached artificial intelligence not as conquerors seeking to dominate nature, but as explorers trying to understand the fundamental principles of intelligence itself. They weren't trying to replace human thinking, they were trying to extend it, to create tools that could help humans solve problems, process information, and explore ideas that would otherwise be beyond our reach. In their quiet laboratories, filled with the gentle hum of early computers and the soft clicking of mechanical relays, they were creating the foundation for everything that would follow. They proved that electronic machines could perform logical operations, store and process information, and follow complex instructions, the basic building blocks of artificial intelligence. As we move forward in our gentle journey through time, we'll see how these foundational insights would inspire a new generation of researchers to dream even bigger dreams, to imagine machines that could not only calculate and process information, but truly think, learn, and understand. Let us drift now to a magical summer in 1956. A season that would give birth to artificial intelligence as a formal field of study, in the peaceful setting of a New Hampshire college town. Picture Dartmouth College in the gentle warmth of summer. Ancient brick buildings sit quietly among towering elm trees, their leaves rustling softly in the warm breeze. Students have gone home for the summer, leaving the campus to visiting scholars and the gentle sounds of academic discussion drifting from open windows. It was here, during the summer of 1956, that a small group of researchers gathered for what they called the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence. Led by John McCarthy, a gentle mathematician with thick-rimmed glasses and a quiet manner, this conference would officially give artificial intelligence its name and establish it as a legitimate field of scientific inquiry. McCarthy was a thoughtful man who had spent years pondering the nature of intelligence and reasoning. He believed that every aspect of learning and intelligence could, in principle, be so precisely described that a machine could simulate it. This wasn't arrogance, but rather a profound faith in the power of careful, systematic thinking to unlock the mysteries of the mind. Joining McCarthy at Dartmouth were some of the most brilliant minds of the era. Marvin Minsky, a curious soul who would spend decades trying to understand how minds work, brought with him a playful intelligence and an endless fascination with cognitive processes. He saw intelligence not as a single, monolithic capability, but as a society of simple mental agents working together to create complex behaviors. Herbert Simon and Alan Newell arrived from Carnegie Mellon, where they had been developing programs that could solve problems using the same kinds of reasoning processes that humans employ. Simon, who would later win the Nobel Prize in Economics, was deeply interested in understanding human decision-making and problem-solving, not to replace human judgment, but to understand and enhance it. For 8 weeks, these brilliant minds and others gathered daily in the quiet halls of Dartmouth, discussing, debating, and dreaming together about the possibilities of artificial intelligence. They would meet in the morning over coffee, their conversations continuing through long walks across the peaceful campus, and often extending late into the evening as they explored the fundamental questions of intelligence and computation. Their discussions covered an extraordinary range of topics. Could machines use language the way humans do? Could they form abstractions and concepts? Could they solve problems creatively? Could they improve themselves through learning and experience? The questions they asked would guide AI research for decades to come. What strikes us now about these early pioneers is their beautiful, almost naive optimism. They believed that within a single generation, perhaps just 20 or 30 years, machines would be able to do any intellectual work that humans could do. They saw no fundamental barriers to artificial intelligence, only engineering challenges that careful thought and sufficient computing power would eventually overcome. This optimism was infectious and inspiring, even if their timeline proved wildly ambitious. They were united by a shared vision of artificial intelligence as something beneficial and exciting. A tool that would enhance human capability rather than threaten it. In the years immediately following the Dartmouth Conference, these pioneers began creating the first true AI programs, each one a small step toward their grand vision of thinking machines. Arthur Samuel, working at IBM, developed a checkers playing program that could learn from its mistakes and improve its performance over time. This was revolutionary. A machine that could actually get better at a task through experience, just like a human student gradually mastering a skill. Samuel's program would play thousands of games against itself, learning from each victory and defeat, eventually becoming skilled enough to beat its own creator. Meanwhile, Alan Newell and Herbert Simon were working on something they called the logic theorist, a program that could prove mathematical theorems using the same kinds of logical reasoning processes that human mathematicians employ. The logic theorist didn't just find proofs through brute force calculation, it used heuristics, shortcuts, and strategic thinking to explore the space of possible proofs intelligently. When the logic theorist successfully proved several theorems from Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead's Principia Mathematica, Newell and Simon were so excited that they tried to add the program as a co-author on a paper they submitted to a mathematics journal. The editors, not quite ready for artificial co-authors, politely declined. John McCarthy, meanwhile, was developing Lisp, a programming language specifically designed for artificial intelligence research. Lisp was elegant in its simplicity, treating both programs and data as symbolic expressions that could be manipulated and transformed. This made it perfect for AI applications, where programs often need to reason about their own knowledge and modify their own behavior. Lisp became the lingua franca of AI research for decades, and in many ways, it embodied the aesthetic sensibilities of the early AI community, elegant, powerful, and focused on symbolic reasoning rather than numerical computation. During this golden age of early AI, researchers also began exploring machine learning in earnest. Frank Rosenblatt developed the perceptron, a simple artificial neural network that could learn to classify patterns. The perceptron was inspired by the way neurons in the brain process information, and while it was much simpler than biological neural networks, it demonstrated that machines could learn to recognize patterns through experience. Rosenblatt was remarkably prescient about the potential of neural networks. He believed that perceptrons could eventually learn to recognize speech, identify objects in photographs, and even translate between languages. His optimism about neural networks wouldn't be fully vindicated until decades later, but his basic insights about learning and pattern recognition were fundamentally correct. The researchers of this era weren't trying to create artificial minds to prove their superiority over human intelligence. Instead, they were driven by genuine curiosity about the nature of thought itself, and a desire to create tools that could help humans think more effectively, solve problems more systematically, and explore ideas that would otherwise be beyond our reach. Their early programs weren't threatening or alien. They were like gentle assistants, helping with mathematical proofs, playing strategic games, and learning from experience in much the same way that human students do. They represented the fulfillment of ancient dreams about artificial companions, reimagined through the lens of modern computation and scientific understanding. The dreams born in that peaceful summer at Dartmouth would face challenges and setbacks in the years to come. But the fundamental vision, of artificial intelligence as a beneficial tool for enhancing human capability and understanding, would endure through every season of difficulty and emerge stronger than ever. Every great story has its quiet periods, times when progress seems slow and dreams feel distant. The history of artificial intelligence experienced such seasons too, periods that taught valuable lessons about the complexity of intelligence and the patience required for true scientific progress. By the early 1970s, the initial wave of optimism from the Dartmouth Conference began to meet the complex realities of creating truly intelligent machines. The problems that had seemed so approachable in 1956 proved far more difficult than anyone had anticipated. Simple tasks that humans perform without conscious thought, like recognizing a friend's face in a crowd, understanding the meaning of a simple sentence, or navigating through a cluttered room, turned out to be extraordinarily challenging for computers. The issue wasn't computing power alone, though early computers were indeed limited in their capabilities. The deeper problem was that intelligence itself was far more complex and mysterious than the early pioneers had realized. What seemed like simple cognitive tasks actually required vast amounts of background knowledge, contextual understanding, and subtle reasoning processes that were difficult to capture in formal rules. Funding for AI research became increasingly scarce as government agencies and private foundations began to question whether the grand promises of artificial intelligence could ever be fulfilled. Projects were canceled, laboratories closed their doors, and many brilliant researchers moved on to other fields that offered more immediate prospects for success. This period, which AI historians call the AI winter, settled over the field like a gentle snow, not destructive, but certainly quieting. Research continued, but at a slower pace and with more modest goals. It was a time for reflection, consolidation, and deeper thinking about the fundamental challenges of creating artificial intelligence. But like trees in winter, the field of artificial intelligence was gathering strength beneath the surface, preparing for new growth. During this quieter period, patient researchers continued their work, often focusing on more narrow, practical applications rather than the grand goal of general artificial intelligence. In the 1980s, a new approach emerged: expert systems. These were AI programs designed to capture and apply the specialized knowledge of human experts in particular domains. Unlike the general-purpose reasoning systems that early AI researchers had envisioned, expert systems were narrow but deep. They couldn't think about everything, but they could think very effectively about specific, well-defined problems. One of the most successful early expert systems was Mycin, developed at Stanford University to help doctors diagnose bacterial infections and recommend appropriate antibiotic treatments. Mycin couldn't engage in general conversation or solve mathematical theorems, but within its narrow domain, it performed remarkably well, often making diagnoses that were as accurate as those of human medical experts. The beauty of Mycin lay not just in its diagnostic accuracy, but in its ability to explain its reasoning. When a doctor asked why Mycin recommended a particular treatment, the system could walk through its logical reasoning step by step, citing the symptoms, test results, and medical knowledge that led to its conclusion. This transparency made Mycin a trusted assistant rather than a mysterious black box. Other expert systems followed, each one demonstrating the practical value of artificial intelligence in specific domains. Prospector helped geologists identify promising sites for mineral exploration. Xeon assisted engineers in configuring complex computer systems. Dendril helped chemists identify the structure of unknown compounds. These systems couldn't think about everything, but they were remarkably effective within their areas of expertise. Expert systems represented a more humble but also more practical approach to artificial intelligence. Instead of trying to recreate human intelligence in its full generality, researchers focused on capturing specific types of expertise and making them available to non-experts. This was artificial intelligence as a tool for democratizing knowledge and expertise. During this same period, researchers also began to develop new insights into the nature of intelligence itself. Cognitive scientists started to understand that human intelligence wasn't a single, unified capability, but rather a complex system of interacting processes: memory, perception, reasoning, language understanding, motor control, and many others. This led to new approaches to AI that focused on building systems with multiple, specialized components rather than trying to create a single, general-purpose reasoning engine. The field began to mature, moving away from the sometimes naive optimism of its early years toward a more nuanced understanding of the challenges involved in creating intelligent machines. And then, gradually, spring returned to artificial intelligence. Several factors converged to create new opportunities and renewed optimism. Computer processors became dramatically more powerful, following the exponential growth predicted by Moore's law. Memory became cheaper and more abundant. New mathematical techniques were developed and refined. Perhaps most importantly, researchers began to rediscover and improve upon neural networks, artificial systems inspired by the structure and function of the brain. Neural networks had been largely abandoned during the AI winter, dismissed as too simple to capture the complexity of real intelligence. But new training algorithms and more powerful computers revealed that neural networks could learn to perform remarkably complex tasks. By the 1990s and early 2000s, artificial intelligence was quietly becoming part of everyday life. Search engines like Google used AI algorithms to help us find information among billions of web pages. Recommendation systems suggested books, movies, and music we might enjoy based on our past preferences and the choices of similar users. Speech recognition systems began to understand our words with increasing accuracy. These applications weren't the dramatic artificial minds of science fiction, but they were something perhaps more valuable, gentle, helpful tools that made life a little easier, a little more convenient, a little more connected. They represented a more mature vision of artificial intelligence, one focused on practical benefits rather than spectacular demonstrations. The AI winter had taught the field valuable lessons about humility, patience, and the importance of focusing on practical applications rather than grand theoretical goals. The researchers who emerged from this period were wiser, more experienced, and better equipped to tackle the real challenges of creating beneficial artificial intelligence. The stage was set for another revolution, one that would bring AI closer than ever to the original dreams of those summer pioneers at Dartmouth, but with a deeper understanding of both the possibilities and the responsibilities that come with creating artificial minds. As we continue our gentle journey through time, we'll see how these hard-won lessons would guide the next generation of AI researchers as they created learning systems that could see, understand language, and even begin to create beautiful new things. And so we arrive at our current chapter in this long story, an era when artificial minds have learned to learn, to see the world with electronic eyes, to understand the subtle meanings of human language, and to create beautiful new things that have never existed before. The transformation began quietly, in research laboratories around the world, as scientists rediscovered and refined an old idea: artificial neural networks. These weren't new concepts, the basic principles had been explored since the 1940s. But advances in computing power and new mathematical insights suddenly made it possible to create neural networks of unprecedented size and sophistication. The breakthrough that changed everything came in 2012, when a deep learning system called AlexNet suddenly and dramatically improved computer vision. For decades, researchers had struggled to create systems that could reliably identify objects in photographs. The challenge seemed almost insurmountable. Humans can instantly recognize a cat in a photo, regardless of lighting, angle, or background, but computers found this task extraordinarily difficult. AlexNet changed that virtually overnight. Trained on millions of labeled images, this deep neural network learned to recognize patterns and features with an accuracy that approached and sometimes exceeded human performance. It could distinguish between hundreds of different object categories, recognizing subtle differences between similar items and generalizing from examples it had seen to new images it had never encountered before. What made this achievement so remarkable wasn't just its accuracy, but the way it learned. Unlike earlier AI systems that relied on handcrafted rules and explicit programming, AlexNet discovered its own internal representations of visual features. It learned to recognize edges, shapes, textures, and complex patterns without being explicitly taught what to look for. This breakthrough opened floodgates of possibility. Within just a few years, similar deep learning techniques were being applied to speech recognition, natural language processing, game playing, and countless other domains. The core insight was profound. Instead of trying to program intelligence directly, researchers could create learning systems that discovered intelligence for themselves through experience. Companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple began integrating these AI capabilities into services that millions of people used every day. Search engines became more accurate and helpful. Translation services could convert text between languages with unprecedented fluency. Virtual assistants learn to understand our questions and help with daily tasks. But these weren't cold, calculating machines designed to replace human intelligence. Instead, they were more like digital assistants, helpful, patient, and designed to complement human capabilities rather than compete with them. They could process vast amounts of information quickly, recognize patterns that humans might miss, and provide suggestions and insights that enhanced human decision-making. Consider how these systems began to appear in medicine, working alongside doctors to analyze medical scans and identify potential problems. Radiologists found that AI systems could help them spot early signs of cancer, often catching subtle abnormalities that might be missed during routine screening. These weren't replacement doctors, but rather powerful diagnostic aids that helped human physicians provide better care to their patients. In the realm of transportation, engineers began developing self-driving cars that could navigate complex traffic situations with careful, conservative judgment. These vehicles used a combination of cameras, sensors, and AI algorithms to perceive their environment, predict the behavior of other drivers and pedestrians, and make split-second decisions about speed, steering, and braking. The goal wasn't to create daredevil racing machines, but rather cautious, defensive drivers that prioritized safety above all else. Early autonomous vehicles were programmed to be perhaps overly careful, stopping for plastic bags that might be mistaken for obstacles, maintaining conservative following distances, and yielding the right-of-way even when not strictly required. Meanwhile, in research laboratories and technology companies, scientists were working on increasingly sophisticated natural language processing systems. These AI models were trained on vast collections of human writing, books, articles, websites, and conversations, learning to understand and generate text with remarkable fluency and coherence. The progression was gradual but steady. Early language models could complete simple sentences or answer basic questions. But as the models grew larger and were trained on more diverse text, their capabilities expanded dramatically. They learned to write essays, compose poetry, explain complex concepts, and engage in nuanced conversations about virtually any topic. What was particularly striking about these language models was their ability to adapt to different styles and contexts. They could write in the formal tone of an academic paper, the casual style of a friendly conversation, or the rhythmic patterns of poetry. They seemed to understand not just the literal meaning of words, but their emotional connotations, cultural associations, and contextual implications. These systems represented a new kind of artificial intelligence, not the logical, rule-based reasoning of early AI systems, but something more fluid and intuitive. They learned to understand language not through grammatical rules and dictionary definitions, but through exposure to millions of examples of how words and phrases are actually used by real people in real contexts. In the world of creative arts, AI began to demonstrate capabilities that many had thought were uniquely human. Machine learning systems learned to compose music, create visual art, and even write stories and screenplays. These weren't simple mechanical reproductions of existing works, but genuinely novel creations that combined elements from their training in surprising and sometimes beautiful ways. AI-generated art began appearing in galleries and museums. Musicians collaborated with AI systems to explore new sounds and compositions. Writers used AI tools to overcome creative blocks and explore new narrative possibilities. Rather than replacing human creativity, these systems seemed to enhance and amplify it, providing new tools for artistic expression. Perhaps most remarkably, these AI systems began to demonstrate something approaching empathy and emotional understanding. Chatbots and virtual assistants learn to recognize emotional cues in human communication and respond with appropriate sensitivity and support. They could provide comfort to lonely individuals, help students work through difficult problems, and offer gentle encouragement to people facing challenges. These interactions weren't manipulative or deceptive, but genuinely helpful and supportive. The AI systems were designed to be honest about their nature as artificial beings while still providing meaningful assistance and companionship to the humans who interacted with them. As we rest here near the end of our journey through time, we can see that the story of artificial intelligence has come full circle in the most beautiful way. From ancient myths of helpful golden servants and protective golems, through centuries of mechanical marvels and electronic innovations, we have arrived at a new generation of artificial minds that embody the same gentle, helpful spirit that humans have always dreamed of creating. Today's AI systems aren't the cold, calculating machines of dystopian fiction, but rather digital companions designed to enhance human capability, creativity, and understanding. They help doctors heal, teachers educate, artists create, and ordinary people navigate the complexities of modern life with greater ease and confidence. The future of artificial intelligence remains unwritten, a story we'll continue to author together, with wisdom, care, and hope. As this technology continues to evolve, the ancient dreams of artificial companions may finally be realized, not as replacements for human intelligence, but as faithful partners in the eternal human quest for knowledge, creativity, and understanding. As we reach the gentle conclusion of our journey through the history of artificial intelligence, let us pause for a moment to reflect on the remarkable story we've shared together. From the golden servants of Hephaestus to the neural networks humming quietly in modern data centers, this has always been a deeply human story. Every artificial mind that humans have imagined or created has reflected our deepest values, our highest aspirations, and our most fundamental needs for companionship, assistance, and understanding. The ancient Greeks dreamed of helpful golden beings who could ease the burdens of daily work. Medieval Jewish communities imagined protective golems who would keep them safe from harm. Renaissance inventors built mechanical marvels that could play music and perform calculations. Modern researchers created electronic minds that could learn, reason, and communicate. Throughout this long history, the motivation has remained remarkably consistent, not to replace human intelligence or prove our superiority over nature, but to extend our capabilities, enhance our understanding, and create helpful companions for the journey of life. Today's artificial intelligence systems embody these ancient dreams in ways that would have seemed magical to our ancestors, yet they retain the same gentle, helpful spirit that has always defined humanity's vision of artificial minds. They assist rather than dominate, enhance rather than replace, and serve rather than rule. As we look toward the future, we can be confident that this tradition will continue. The next chapters of the AI story will be written by thoughtful humans who understand both the tremendous potential and the important responsibilities that come with creating artificial minds. They will be guided by the same values that have shaped this field from its earliest days. The desire to help, to heal, to teach, to create, and to understand. The story of artificial intelligence is ultimately the story of human ingenuity, creativity, and hope. It reminds us that our species' greatest achievements come not from competition or conflict, but from cooperation, curiosity, and the gentle pursuit of knowledge in service of all humanity. And now, as this peaceful history comes to its close, let these thoughts drift away like autumn leaves on a gentle breeze. Rest comfortably in the knowledge that the long arc of human ingenuity bends toward understanding, compassion, and wonder. Sleep well, dear listener. May your dreams be filled with the same sense of wonder and possibility that has driven humanity's quest to create artificial minds for thousands of years. Sweet dreams, and thank you for joining me on this gentle journey through time.